Heather Rose Jones is an industrial failure analyst for a biotech pharmaceutical company, an amateur historian specializing in queer women's history, and an author of historical and fantasy stories. In her spare time, she enjoys gardening, bicycling, and wondering where all the time goes, as well as wearing really cool necklaces. Heather, it's yours.
I'll be reading from the chapter in which we introduce the fairy who has laid the curse on the beast and on his sister. Ah, Perenelle, you are patient now. Patient enough to stand outside the gates of Betancourt for days to see what might befall. You were not so patient when you were, but no, you were not young then. It has been very long since you were young, hasn't it? The Fae are young only once and old for a very long time. But one may be impatient at any age. Do you remember when you were young, Perenelle? Do you remember the glittering halls of Tortespine and the guests your parents hosted for balls and hunting parties? How they would ride out to slip between the worlds and tease those in mortal lands. Do you remember learning to walk the worlds for yourself? How to draw the glamour after you to hide the truth from mortal eyes? Do you remember how it felt to be new come into your power and uncertain? To make mistakes? But one may be foolish and make mistakes at any age. Isn't that so, Perenelle? There was no need for patience then. You were eager to seize the world in your hands, to touch each seed of promise and feel it grow beneath your fingers. Green and growing things were your gift. You knew how the world worked in the certainty of your power. Your parents left Tortespine in your keeping and went to walk the worlds again. That is what Fae do when they see their children grown and settled. Your fame and power increased. You were certain of the shape your life would take. The world had rules, and you knew them as you knew the stone walls of Tortespine. You knew with a certainty beyond doubt where your path would lead. Just as you had thrived in your parents' affection, you knew what love to expect from a husband, from a child. But the world has plans of its own. She was the child of your heart, wasn't she, Perenelle? You hadn't yet thought to contemplate a child of your body. No man, whether of the Fae or of mortal lands, had yet sparked the fire you knew would someday come. You were patient. But oh, they brought her to you, a shy and weeping child, hoping that you could lift her curse. It was no curse, was it? Simply a gift gone awry. With every sob and hiccup, flowers and jewels fell from her dainty lips. Violets and asphodel, pearls and rubies, gillyflowers and columbine, sharp, brilliant diamonds and cruel, sweet, thorny roses, tearing her lips and throat until she screamed. And you, Perenelle, you took her in your arms and kissed her bleeding lips, tasting of rose and violet, and promised to teach her how to shape her gift. The mouth was for words and kisses, you said. Sorcery belonged to the hands. She struck you to the heart, didn't she, Perenelle? Her parents poured out their gratitude and relief and promised you anything you desired. And you found you desired a daughter, a child to teach the language of green and growing things. What could they do? They left her to your care. That's what Fae do, isn't it? They leave. There was no need for patience then, Perenelle. She was the daughter of your heart, the student of your dreams. She grew and learned and blossomed. She was the darling of your guests, the joy of every ball, plucking flowers and bright jewels out of the air and speaking in the language of roses. She drew the eye of the Dufortigny's, the masters of Betancourt, and they begged, "Let her come to visit our son Philippe, now he has grown to mastery. It is time for us to walk the worlds, and he needs a wife to steady him, an alliance to build his influence. Let her come to see if they suit." You weren't ready to let her go yet, were you, Perenelle? She was your darling and your child. No other love had come to claim your heart, no one who fit the shape you'd saved for him in your life. But she laughed and said that though she had no mind to wed just yet, she wished to visit Betancourt. You brought her there in pomp and celebration. And because you didn't care to return alone to Tordesillas, you went to travel distant lands and play with mortal lives. You promised to return, a year and a day. And then, if she wished, there would be a wedding such as not been seen in a mortal lifetime. The world had rules, and you would follow them. A year and a day. You never doubted you would see her again, did you, Perenelle? You returned, and she was gone, with all her retinue, and no one would say a word. You raged, and you warned, and you pleaded, and no one would tell you where she had gone or why, not cruel Philippe nor silent Grace. You cursed yourself that you hadn't seen their hearts before. So many things you didn't see. The world had rules, and when they stepped outside the bounds, they drew their own doom. You cursed yourself with words, but you cursed them with ancient power. You cursed them as you saw them, the cruel beast and the silent stone. Ah, yes, so many things you didn't see. You had no patience then, Perenelle. You meant the curse as a punishment, as a threat to loosen their tongues. Surely they must know where your child had gone, what had sent her fleeing from Betancourt. But Philippe only laughed. He knew the laws that bound you, and that every curse must have its key. You made that key as cruel as his laughter. And then you left to search for your daughter through every world you knew. 6 years you sought her, locked in anguish and despair, and never found a trace. Then 6 more, wandering alone, seeking solace, as Tordesillas fell to empty ruin. You thought a mortal interlude might heal your heart. You thought him a simple, uncomplicated man. He adored you with the love you always thought to win. He promised you anything your heart desired, and you thought to fill your empty arms with mortal children to erase that other loss. But mortal men cannot be trusted with a heart. You discovered that, didn't you, Perenelle? You married him with vows and words within a church that trapped you in his world and thought you could be content. He promised you everything your heart desired, but he lied. That's what mortals do. They lie. His selfish faithlessness set you free. You, but not your mortal children. They were too young to make that choice. They had been signed with holy water, and their blood still bound them to that world. You could not take them, and you would not stay. And so you left. That's what Fae do, isn't it, Perenelle? Oh, but Perenelle, yeah, now you have learned patience. If you have not been granted the love you were promised, you can still punish those who broke your heart. You set your spies at Betancourt, and every time they raise the glamour to let the mortal world in, you know. Nothing comes of it. You can't pierce their defenses, but you know that much. If the Dufortignes had succeeded in enticing an innocent within those walls, if one of them had known and offered true love, you would have felt it when the chains broke. Their glamour is fraying now as the curse comes near fulfillment. You know that calendar written in your bones. 3 days and 30 years, a span to conjure with. Nearly the whole of it is accomplished. If those two succeed at the last, you will be there to witness. And if they fail, you will witness that as well, and your heart will find its rest. Now, the gates have opened once more, both those of iron and those of sorcery, and you wait outside to see what may befall. You are patient now.